Personally, I would have been happy with just 2 points from the South Africa trip, but in the end, the Max Deegan All-Stars got five. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me this week is someone making Harpin Pod appearance number 65. Welcome back to Mr. Conor Cronin.
Thanks for having me. I'm getting ever closer to that same number as Tom, so we'll have to be careful.
Indeed. And completing our panel is another Leinster and Ireland rugby nut earning cap number 9. Well, hello to Mr. David Cordial.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be here.
Good to see you both. Right, let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which is, of course, the Hollywood Bets Sharks v Leinster in round 14 of the 24-25 BKT United Rugby Championship. It was played at Kings Park on Saturday, March 29th, and there was a decent enough crowd in Durban, including a smattering of Leinster support enjoying the warm evening weather, as Sharks out half Jordan Hendricks got the match underway, Connor.
Yeah, look, got everything underway, and I won't shy away from the fact that before this game, I hadn't got the most positive expectations of what we'd get from this, and I don't think
we're not alone.
No, I think a lot of people would have looked at 9 Springboks in a team versus a couple of internationals in a team, and raised eyebrows. And I know in another chat I'm in, the text that came in was, so are they going to beat us by more than 30 or less than 30? So when in literally the opening minute, we get the first scrum because, Osborne took the kickoff a little clumsily, but he took it. And then off the exit, nobody takes it. And then Vinton Gunn eventually gets it and tries to clear, but it's charged down. And as it bounces back towards Osborne, he can't take it cleanly. And as I say, we're less than a minute in the first scrum of, I think it's 9 scrums in the first half. And again, that's an ominous number because when you consider the front row experience that the Sharks had versus, look, I mean, nobody's more experienced than Cian Healy, but, comparatively speaking, it's a much less experienced front row for us. So, and I think the scrum, I don't think it's unfair to say, it was a bit clumsy in spots. Moments where I think we're just not painting the right picture. I think after one of the first couple, Cian Healy's kind of standing there going, Sorry, what exactly are you calling this for? What were you expecting from me? What are you needing me to do here that I'm not doing? And I say we're not setting the right picture for him a lot. But look, we get off that first scrum, we get into our first big defensive set, and I think it's 10 or 12 phases of them gaining absolutely no ground, which was incredible to watch back. Right, when you're watching it live, you've got the stress of watching it live. But watching it back and knowing that nothing's coming of this, and then watching and seeing like, oh, actually, look, they're being driven backwards here. And okay, they've gained yards again, but they're no further than the original scrum. So it takes Will Connors being pinged for being off his feet. I think the Sharks are lucky in this one not to have it reversed because there's what looks like a neck roll for me. And even the South African comms commented that it looked like a neck roll for them as well. But look, they go to the corner. We get pinged in the maul for coming up the side of the maul instead of through the middle. And they take a quick tap and suddenly we're being pinged for offside. And it's less than 60 seconds for 3 penalties. I think a braver referee might have gone to his pocket immediately saying that is 3 in this area. And even without a warning might have gone to his pocket. We're thankful we get the warning. And look, they go for the quick tap again. And they only take 1 phase, so it's straight into contact and then right out to the backs. And a great tackle by Jimmy O'Brien forces them into a knock-on. We can't get the ball out of the scrum, unfortunately. So as good as Jimmy O'Brien's tackle was, and as much as he's giving us the opportunity to get out of our own space, they've got a penalty off the scrum and they go into the corner again. Fortunately, it's sloppy from them. and they're being forced backwards, and it's outside our 22 when they knock it on again. And this time, when we go for the scrum, we're much quicker about it. It's in and out fast. There's no hanging around. There's no waiting to see if we can get a shove or will they shove or anything else. It's just route one, for want of a better term, is get it in, get it out. Nobody's being penalised for feeding the second rows anymore. So just get it in there and get it the hell away. And Max Deegan comes out with it. And let's take a moment of appreciation for Max Deegan in that match. For a fella I wasn't sure would play, having had the HIA last week, I'm kind of hoping it was a case of, look, we've got you off now, and the lads who are on in your place are settling well. Let's just keep you off and not worry about whether you pass the HIA or not. Let's just let the game play out, and you stay here, and we'll save you for next week. Boy, did he save himself, because I think he had a phenomenal 80 minutes. I think he did incredibly well as a player. I think he did really well as a captain. When you see people talking about all the conversations he's having with the ref, I love it. He's asking questions. There's never anything more than that. It's like, sir, can we just check? Sir, can I ask you? Can we? And it's very calm chat. So I think he's leading really, really well for the team. He's the man to get it over the halfway line for the first time in the match for us, because his carry out gets us close enough to their 10. But we get it wide, and we knock it on once we get in there again. There's all the talk about the ball being like a bar of soap. Jesus, like a bar of soap, where nobody thought to spray their hands with the magic spray that they seemed to be going on with beforehand. It just must have been super slippery for the amount of knock-ons there were. But they get the ball and pass it out wide. But Tommy O'Brien lines up the Sharks player and just hammers into him and stops the ball getting anywhere. There's another man who had a good game, and again, worth giving him his praise now while I think of it, because I think Tommy O'Brien, it's great to see him playing well, and playing well where he's not got the stress of, I've just come back from an injury, which has often happened to him. He's just come back from an injury, and maybe he's been a little tentative and gets injured again, or maybe he's not being tentative and gets injured again. So good to see him getting a run of games. He's hurt himself as he hits Mapimpi, but and eventually after a couple of minutes he gets called off for HIA. But before he gets called off for HIA, they have a scrum, but they get pinged for holding on in the ruck. We get into touch just outside the 10-meter line, but they steal it. There's a whole lot of messing going on at line out in this game. What is Hendrickson doing? Non-stop, just following our player up to the hooker and listening in. And more importantly, what are we doing letting them? Surely somebody saw that and needed to call it. I think he gets a little, hey, bugger off at one stage, but he needed to get it more frequently and more enthusiastically. Look, they steal the line, as I say, and they kick it through. They can't regather, and they knock on, and then they shove early in the scrum. So we've got the free kick. We went for the high kick, and I think Kieran Frawley is a man who he just needs one game to go right from right now. One game. And I feel like everything had clicked back into place and he'd have his confidence back. But when you have a moment like this where he's gone for the Gary Owens, kicked very, very high, but it's kicked way too long, and they have acres of space to field it and call for the mark. It's at this stage that Tommy O'Brien gets called off for the HIA, and we get Henry Mackerleen coming on. I think we should all take a moment. I'm taking a lot of moments for a lot of players. I was watching the RG 9 o'clock news, and I sent them a message about this. If you're going to name a player, at least get his name right. They seem to call him Josh Mackerleen on the sports report yesterday on the 9 o'clock news. Wasn't impressed by that. You've got one job, get people's names right. But he comes on. We line out on the Sharks 22. We take it clean, which is great. And then it's phases for a bit. We don't seem to be getting anywhere until Jimmy O'Brien gets a lovely breakthrough and offloads it to Soroka. And suddenly, Soroka, who was playing, I get another player playing really well yesterday. He gets us to about 7 meters out, and we're knocking on the door with more phases. It's so many phases that if you watch it back, the phase counter stops at 14, and it's like they've stopped trying to count the phases. I reckon it's about 25 before we get a penalty for them being offside. We've upped for the tap and go, and in the next phase, we get called for a knock on. Now, when I was watching this live, I'm like, there's no way that's a knock on. And you hear them saying, oh, look, it's an orange boot, so it's got to be a Leinster player. And then you look and you go, wait, Hendricks is wearing orange boots. This can't be right. And even watching it back, I'm looking at it, and the first time, forgetting that this is the moment where the yellow card happens, I'm looking going, hang on a second, that's Hendricks's boot. I felt like a member of Mystery Inc. or something, where I'm ready to pull the Leinster player's mask off and reveal it was him all along. But he knows what he's doing as well. Like, he looks, he stares at it and then kicks it. It's a bit like the Italian a couple of weeks ago in the Ireland game doing the same thing. He knew what he was at, he knew why he was doing it, and he gets called for being cynical. We're just about to get set called in the scrum before Ben Whitehouse actually calls it down and says, hang on, there's Sharks players wearing orange boots too, and we've another camera angle.
The rare time we're happy for Whitehouse to stick his nose in.
Yeah, look, and he got it right.
We're usually giving out about it.
Yeah, there are other calls that I felt, like I said, the neck roll from earlier, I felt he could have called and didn't. But this one, he gets it right. It's 100% cynical, and they're off for the yellow card. We tap and go, and it's only a couple of phases before it's called for the backs, and Gunn fires the pass over the top of what looks like 3 Leinster players and 3 Sharks players out to Henry Mackerleen, who's out in the wing waiting for it, and he counters over for the score. Unfortunate that it's unconverted. You can forgive it being unconverted. It's right out on the edge. It's a tough position to try and get a conversion from, but still a little disappointing. Off the restart, we clear quick, and off their line out, we force a knock on and manage again to clear from the scrum. They get the possession and they kick it down, where they kick it quite long, and Jimmy O'Brien fields it really well. Like, if we're ever concerned about Hugo Keenan, it's great to see that Jimmy O'Brien's coming into some really good form at the moment and fielding high balls really well. And then we just pin them back into their own half. They kick it long and go hunting for a turnover before Frawley gets hit quite late. It's not even that it's late. It's just that it's not a charge down. It's not some player running in, arms up, and he's diving towards the kick. It's that he's gone jumping and he's kind of flailing himself in Frawley's general direction. I think it's probably karma that he hurts himself in the process, and we get we get the penalty from where the ball lands, which is just outside the 22. I won't lie, at the time and on watch back, I was thinking to myself, why aren't we taking the 3 here? I think taking the 3 here was the right option, and not because I know afterwards that that we don't score again while they've got a yellow card, but it was the smart decision either way, because 3 points makes it 2 scores. 3 points in quite what I would have said would have been a comfortable position for any kicker, even one who's not got confidence at the moment. And maybe that's the kick that gives him a little bit of confidence and helps build him up a bit. Look, we kick for the corner instead, and we get clean line out, and we get quite close, but we can't get. There's clearly a backline move we're looking to get working at one stage, and it's just not happening. And then we're getting done for not rolling away in tackle, and the yellow card is suddenly over, and they've come away with only conceding 5 points in that, where I really believe it should have been 8. We absolutely should have gone for the 3 there, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, and being an armchair pundit is a wonderful thing, but I think it probably would have been the smarter call, and they might look at that afterwards and question, and look, if the forwards are backing themselves, fair enough, but the scoreboard has to reflect it afterwards. So that's just where I'm at on it. Look, they kick the next penalty to kick that penalty to touch. We defend it well before their backs get a little break, and suddenly it feels like we're panicking a little bit, and they're kicking through in space, and I think maybe they panic a little bit as well. It's like, we've got something. What do we do with it now? And I think when they kick through, it's probably the wrong call. Contact might have been the better call. Give time for the forwards to catch up off that break, and we managed to clear it again. This time, instead of going for a maul, Sharks, they take it off the top, and it's a couple of phases before Turner has a beautiful read. He comes sprinting up into the line and takes it clean into his chest as the ball is passed. And you're just wishing he wasn't so close to the Sharks player and would have had opportunity for space or opportunity to pass it away, but he's just so close. But look, it's a turnover. And he's done really well to take it, in my opinion. It gets passed eventually back out to Frawley, and he kicks it out on the full. And suddenly we're getting a line out in pretty much the exact same space as the previous line out had been. And off that, fortunately, they knock on, so we have the space to get it out of the scrum. We go for the Gary Owen. Tommy O'Brien's sprinting after it to try and take it. Unfortunately, he knocks it on, and their scrum gets the better of ours for another penalty. Off the line out, they get another penalty, and from this second line out, they can kick it closer to the corner. And it's just they go for them all, and then it's fast phases to get within a meter, and then they're called short a couple of times before Hendrickse comes in and seals off. The other Hendrickse comes in and seals off, and I think it's a coach killer, that one, because they're just hammering at us. There's only so long you can take that punishment, and whatever about a knock on, you'll forgive your players a knock on, you'll forgive, but giving away a penalty in that space, it's a coach killer for them. We kick the penalty to touch, but we fluff the line out and they get to come at us again. And the pressure of Tommy O'Brien and Jimmy O'Brien combined forces a bad pass, which gets knocked on by Mapimpi. Ball goes out into touch as Tommy O'Brien is wrestling him into touch. And none of them realise it's half time, because we get some lovely handbags with the beautiful feature of some classy Sharks fans shouting that they should, I won't use the words they used, but they should something him up, and they keep shouting it. Stay classy. But look, they don't realise it's half time. Breakspear does, and he's telling everybody to get in the sheds, and we've got a 5-0 lead going into half time.
Yeah, second week in a row. We had a lead at that stage, but it was a different kind of a game than it was the previous week. I mean, like you said, we had low expectations going into it, especially given the 23 we'd named. But the team has the moniker the Max Deegan All-Stars, so we used to call it the Rhys Ruddock All-Stars in years gone by, and it was interesting because
I'd say just. It's not necessarily the team we named. I think the discomfort a lot of people had was the team they named.
Well,
I think that was the bigger thing.
Given the opposition that they had been, the Sharks had been together since January, without the encumberment of any test rugby. They were just they had that run of games. Although the previous week they kind of squeaked by against Zebra, so they might have had some form issues. But anyway, you look at that front row they had, and the scrum was always going to be an issue for us, no matter who we had. I just thought that they were too focused on their scrum. And you talked about Max Deegan talking to the ref. One of the reasons he had the freedom to talk to the ref was because they were continuously talking to the ref about the scrums. They were saying, oh, watch for this and watch for that. Oxes particularly was going at him. Now watch for this in the scrums, watch for that in the scrums. I mean, it's like a lot of that pisses off a lot of refs, because a lot of referees are like, the scrums are to get the ball out so you can actually play rugby. If I see something, I'll penalize for you. But if you keep waiting for it, not all refs will do that. I thought maybe we got the benefit
we're
of
hearing
that
phrase regularly when it comes to scrum time. I will reward dominance if I see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So stop asking me. If I see you doing it right, you'll know you've done it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a similar game against the Sharks 2 years ago, ironically, where it was Rhys Ruddock at the back of the scrum. Eventually, towards the end, we ended up getting losing bonus point in that game, because we were doing this channel one, getting it just straight out, no messing. And we got that a lot here as well. But for the Sharks, I just thought watching it back a second time, it's just how kind of, I don't know, is it one-dimensional their attack was. when you have a team that's got such a powerful back three that can turn something into nothing. I mean, our defense was strong. I thought Tector and Turner were combining very well. At times, they got a turnover and they were doing double hits and double tackles as well,
and especially against Osterhausen and why can't I think of the 13's name right now? Julius,
yeah,
and like,
well, that's the quality. Their quality, and they were getting good crash ball, but only on their own each time. It was very one-dimensional. I mean, if one of them just supported the other for an offload, they could have gotten. I felt they could have got. They didn't really seem set up for that. We were when they did have a break, we were able to snuff them out. But it was a. And as for, I agree with you totally on the taking the three, especially away from home, especially that far away from home. Given the way these you have a shot in front of the goals, you take it. But they were going for it. Frawley is just. He needs games. He does, he needs games to build his confidence. Unfortunately, the way the season pans out, he's not going to get them. There's going to be another 2 weeks gone where he's not going to have 10 on his back. But he just needs a run of games, and you can see he's trying to force it each time. Listen, but going back to what I originally said, low expectations. To have the lead was definitely something. What did you make in the first half, David?
Yeah, it's certainly not. I mean, if you told me at the start of that half that we were going to come out the end of it with a lead, even a lead that narrow, just a bit in the handoff, it was definitely not something we expected. I would agree that I think that the opportunity off the back of the Frawley penalty to take three, I think would probably be the only regret of that half. And after 40 minutes of rugby, to have only really one major regret, that and possibly the misconversion. Is an enviable position to be in. To speak on those two instances, having the Frawley penalty, I mean, that was a situation where he was clearing the ball. We had no advantage in that situation. He was clearing the ball from literally his own try line. We end up with a penalty on their 22 because he's got a big boot on him, but also because the Sharks player who put in the hit, it was a stupid thing to do. I mean, it's cynical. Stupid. But it was stupid, and it ended up costing them 80 meters and
the yellow card was pretty stupid as well.
Oh, I've got the yellow card written down as well.
Yeah.
It was just a testament to, and in that situation as well, anyone who saw it will know that the player who hit it Frawley ended up hurting himself worse than he hurt Frawls, because obviously he had his leg in the air, so I think he got a knee somewhere painful, and he was down for a few minutes getting treatment after having just conceded a penalty. Then we go up to the other end in the lead up to the Mackerleen try. It's Leinster on attack up close, and it's the scrum half, isn't it? Who's Hendrikse, who's foot flies out and kicks the ball loose. Initially it gets missed. I think too many people in orange boots was the problem, and it's called back. He gets a yellow card, we get a penalty, and then the Mackerleen try is the lovely bridge pass from Fintan Gunn, but Mackerleen's out on the wing, there's no one near him, and you can almost look at it and go, oh, there's one player missing from the line, I wonder where he is. And it's just, I think the Sharks, South African teams in general tend to favour physicality, and I think when that's channeled into constructive things in terms of contact, in terms of carrying, they're brutally effective. But they have this tendency, and the Sharks certainly have a tendency, Munster fans would be only too happy to elaborate on that they can step over the line sometimes. And I don't even think the most annoying part of it is that it's borderline a bit shady. It's that it's stupid and it costs you. The Frawley thing cost them 80 meters, it cost them possession. The Hendrikse thing cost them a player in the bin for 10 minutes and then ultimately a try in a 3-point game. I think they'll want to think about why they keep making silly little mistakes like that, and the temper slayer at the wrong time. Mapimpi getting argy-bargy at Tommy O'Brien for having the audacity to tackle him at the end of the first half is another example of that. And actually, to speak on something we talked about off air, we were talking about the women's team and the role that coaching plays. This is a team of Galacticos in terms of South African rugby, and they can't seem to channel it in the way they do at the senior level. So I think at a franchise level, they'd want to question why they're not able to get that out of their players. But I just thought that the half as a whole really spoke to like kind of the way that Leinster are playing this season. Like, we seem to be really big on the defence. Obviously Jack Nienaber now, this is the second season, first full one in charge. We had slightly more missed tackles than the Sharks. They were on 87%, we were on 73%, even though they made actually slightly more. But I think you could see in the way we're defending that flooding the line and catching them behind the gain line was more important than catching them the first time. I know John McKee at one point shoots out of the line and he flies right past the Sharks player, but the guy stops dead because John McKee is flying at him at pace. And in the half second, he stops to step out of McKee's way. Another Leinster player comes up and catches him and pins him on the spot. So even though that'll go down as a missed tackle for John McKee, it stops the opposition player dead and gives the next Leinster player up a chance to catch him. So yeah, I thought that half really spoke to Leinster's narrowing on what they wanted to do and doing it well, and then the Sharks just possibly letting themselves down a bit in from a headspace point of view. Like I said, we came out of that half with maybe one regret, maybe two. The Frawley conversion, it almost seemed like he mistimed it. He didn't realize there were only 10 seconds left. The shot was actually perfectly straight and true. He was just slightly to the left. So you like to think if he had another 5 seconds, he would have nailed that one. But for us to come out of that half with only one regret, and I think the Sharks probably have come out of it with quite a few more. I think that bodes well for the kind of headspace that Leinster had coming out of that first half.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we weathered the early storm. I don't think we got out of our half for 7 minutes, but when we finally did get out of a half, what a way to do it with Max Deegan storming into the into their half. And once we had possession, we showed that we could finish. So there was loads of positives coming out of that half. And like we say, the halftime score was Sharks 0, Leinster 5. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Ruggersphere, like our YouTube channel, where you'll find a bonus chat later in the week on Leinster's ideal matchday squad for the Champions Cup knockouts. To get access to our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky, so do follow us there if you can. And please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so, with the game finally balanced, it was Kieran Frawley getting the second half underway, David.
Yeah, after that fire into the first half, Frawley went ahead and took the restart. I think I actually got a strong sense off of the referee with that fire into the first half that he was almost like, you can beat the crap out of each other, but just do it in the sheds. I don't want you doing it out on the pitch. The half is over. So Frawley comes back, takes the restart. The Sharks clear from, it was inside their 22, but they opted to keep the ball in play. So Leinster catch it just inside our half. Put a few phases together. Frawls launches up another Gary Owen, which was well contested by Tommy O'Brien, who had a very, very, very busy day in a lot of places across the field. In this case, he's able to force a Sharks knock on, and Leinster are able to regather it. But Sharks are able to defend well enough that it's called back for the scrum. At this point, it's the first scrum of the second half, and it kind of followed on from the same kind of attitude that we had in the scrums in the first half, where there was a reset and the ref actually opts to call I think that all 6 front rows over to himself to give them a dressing down. So that scrum ends up taking us about 2 minutes to get properly set. When it does, Deegan comes flying off the back of it. I think, as we said, for the first half, there was an emphasis on getting the ball out of there as quickly as possible. Couple of hard carries there from Soroka, Healy, and Deeney, all making good yards. But just as it seemed like we were starting to make a bit of progress, Kieran Frawley, unfortunately knocked the ball on. The Sharks then gather possession from that knock on. They decided to play out their 22 with some very nice running from Lorenzo Julius, who I think he's still only 20, but he was on fire yesterday for the Sharks there. Sharks put a few phases together, get back into Leinster's half, before some very good defensive pressure from Leinster seemed to be the big focus of the day, and some nice ruck work won us a turnover there, which Frawley was then able to kick down the line to just inside the Sharks 22 for a Leinster lineout. Leinster played off the top and do a nice sort of switch move where they start to fade as if they're going left, and then Frawley passes it back to the right, and Tommy O'Brien hits a very nice line. Doesn't make much ground, but does draw in plenty of defenders into where the lineout would have been, to draw the Sharks players in there. Off the back of that carry, Leinster build more pressure through a couple of strong carries before going wide right and then slaloming just back inside, and a very nice offload from Frawley into Scott Penny, running a very nice line. We've seen him run that line a lot before, but it was nice to see him to pull it out here to get through a gap for Leinster's second try. Unfortunately, Frawley did again miss the conversion. This one was a bit easier. I think he'll have regrets about the fact that he missed those 2 conversions. The 4 points could have been crucial, but he missed that conversion. That was on 48 minutes, and unfortunately, spoiler alert, but 48 minutes, Leinster didn't score again from that point. So it's 10-0 to Leinster at this stage. Sharks take the restart. Leinster clear quickly through Gunn, who I thought had a very good game for his first start. Hell of a place to get your first start. He clears to touch just inside Leinster's half. Sharks take the line out, but Leinster are penalised, I think, for taking the jumper early in the air. So Sharks are able to kick down the line to just inside the 22. At this point, Ross Byrne comes on for Liam Turner. So I'm not 100% sure what the shuffle there was. Ross went 10. I think Frawley goes to 12 and Tector pushes out to 13. Possibly a bit of shuffling. I know Frawley can play fullback too, but I think he was playing mostly in the centre. So Ross comes on for Liam Turner there. Sharks launch a strong drive maul off that line out. Leinster infringe, but in the end, the advantage isn't needed because Bongi and Bonambi peels off the back and is able to fly over the touchline. And in this case, the Sharks were good enough to get the conversion as well. So it is Leinster 10, Sharks 7. And spoiler alert, that's the last time they scored too. So within less than 50 minutes, 30 minutes to go, and both teams have finished their scoring at that stage. Ross Byrne takes the restart, and then I think it was Vincent Chituka, who otherwise had a pretty decent game, made a rare error, kind of similar to Kieran Frawley's last week, where he knocks the ball on while trying to regather it, giving Leinster a scrum inside the Sharks 22. But to credit to them, the Sharks scrum were good enough to bail out their teammate because they won a scrum penalty off Leinster's feed there, giving them the chance to kick clear up to the halfway mark. Leinster didn't compete, and the Sharks play off the top and clear it long. But Jimmy O'Brien, who also I thought quietly had a very good day in the air, controlled it well from the backfield. He won it in the air, but the Sharks were able to then turn it over on the ground. They struck back straight away, turned it over cleanly, no penalty needed, turned it cleanly on the ground. They were able to then attack up the right wing. Some very nice running and offloading from Oxenshea, which didn't used to be allowed from front rowers, but they're all at it now. So he got them up into Leinster's 22. Sharks put some nice phases together, but Jimmy O'Brien, almost to make up for the earlier the earlier turnover rather, came to the rescue and turned it over himself once again cleanly, and Leinster were able to kick it clear from just outside the 22. Sharks came right back. This is probably the most intense period of pressure they showed for that half. Came back hard. Makazole Mupimpi carrying it very hard before they broke wide for what seemed to be an almost certain try. I don't remember the name of the Sharks player, but at the last second he takes a step back in field towards the goalpost, and that half a second he does that, lets Kieran Frawley catch him from behind, Andrew Osborne's come from the front, and somehow the two of them managed to hold him up.
Yeah, I think it was their winger who was interestingly called Hooker.
Yeah, if there, I was just, I honestly couldn't believe the referee, to his credit, called it
some hold up. Yeah,
he called it very quickly, but I think he'll ruin in hindsight. If he'd just gone for the corner, he would have gone over, and there would have been no stopping him. So that attempt to step back in field really cost them there, and so credit to Frawley and Andrew Osborne for being able to hold up there.
100%.
He was also a bit too a lesson for all the wingers out there. He was very upright. He was almost like fully. There wasn't even a bend at the knees. If he was a tackler, he would have been in trouble. And so that just meant it was a little bit easy for Frawley, who's not a small man, and Osborne to get under him and hold him up. So at this point, it was Venter came on to replace Lorenzo Julius at that stage, and Leinster take the goal line dropout through Ross Byrne. Sharks on attack again, fast, but the Leinster D forced a knock on, giving them a scrum on their own 22. Once again, Deegan very quick off the back, running at pace, and Gunn is able to clear long. Tommy O'Brien chasing after it, not fast enough to be able to actually catch the ball, but fast enough to put in his tackle as soon as the Sharks player caught it. Sharks kick, but Jimmy O'Brien wins it back again, very good in the air to be turned. But then once again, the Sharks very quick to the ruck. They were very aggressive at the ruck all night. It's a kind of a hallmark of South African teams, and they were able to put together a nice counter ruck to take that ball back there. They put together some phases there inside Leinster's half, but the ball went loose at one point. a loose pass, and Tommy O'Brien pounced on it, hacking it downfield, chased after it. I think it was Mapimpi, he was racing it. Mapimpi got there first, but it was almost like Tommy O'Brien was waiting for him to pick it up. He picks it up and is promptly thrown to the ground, just outside their 22. The Sharks are able to kick it clear. Andrew Osborne in this case goes up for the catch, but he unfortunately, after seeming to catch it at the start, he does eventually knock it on, and so the Sharks get a scrum just inside their own half. At this point, the two Munster-bound boys, Lee Barron and Michael Milne, come down and bed down for their first scrum. However, it's given as a Sharks penalty for loose head collapse. However, the Sharks then mistouch with the penalty kick. So there's a bit of kick tennis back and forth before Jimmy O'Brien is able to chase well enough to trap the Sharks back in their own half. They box kick. Once again, Osborne goes up to contest it. Once again, unfortunately, he knocks it on. And the Sharks get another scrum. It goes down, and the ref, this is and actually the second time I've noted now, the ref takes another opportunity to drag the front six aside and give them another good talking to. And it seems to work this time, because it's then a Leinster penalty off the scrum. I'm not sure if we won any other. I think it was the one scrum penalty we won at the game. In this case, it was for the back five of the Sharks scrum walking around. So Ross Byrne doesn't miss touch, gets it down onto just the Sharks 22. At this point, the Sharks replace their front row. Leinster play off the line out, run the same move as before, where they go faking right this time and then coming back left to hammer it. Not sure if it was Tommy O'Brien who carried it well this time as well. Might have been Andrew Osborne. Too many blondes in the backfield. If we ever get Jamie Osborne at 15, it'll be really confusing. But another switch.
Very generous of you to call them blonde. I would have said ginger, but go on.
Strawberry blonde.
Strawberry blonde. Frawley's ginger. I don't know about the other lads. 4 gingers on the field, that'd be something to gain. So they switch back, but we put some phases together there just outside the Sharks 22. But into their credit, Leinster didn't really make much ground and eventually give up a penalty for, I think it's Charlie Tector coming in at the side of a ruck. So the Sharks are able to kick up the line. But in this case, actually, this is something I noticed, where a lot of the times teams are not competing for lineouts as much. Or if you get a line out in the middle of the field, it's quite common for the opposition not to compete if they know it's not going to go to a maul. Because of the new rules that mean that uncontested lineouts don't have to be thrown straight anymore. I think there's some teams that have gotten a little bit lax when they assume it's not going to be contested. I think that's what happened here, because Leinster did actually throw some up. Now, it wasn't enough to actually get the line out, but it wasn't straight. Because Leinster did throw some up, the ref called it back, and so Leinster get the line out themselves. So Leinster, I think it was obviously the option for a line out or scrum. Leinster off the line out. However, the Sharks then decide to contest it and successfully win it back themselves. The ball goes loose, but Leinster knock it on. So Sharks get a scrum just inside their own half. Off the back of that scrum, the ref decides to award a free kick. So the Sharks play away. Obviously, the new rule, it's 2 seasons now, you can't call another scrum off a free kick. So Sharks play away. Leinster cough up an advantage for, I think it's Ross Byrne being offside and making an no-arms tackle. So Sharks take the penalty kick down into the Leinster 22, but they overthrow the line out and then tackle, I don't remember which Leinster player it was, but somebody jumped to catch the ball and they actually tackled him while it was Penny. Jumps and then is taken in the air. So Leinster get a penalty off the back of that and are able to clear it back long. So Leinster set a maul off the ensuing lineout and eventually kicked long. And Max Deegan seemed to get to it first, but he dropped the ball. Very unlike him, but he drops it and knocks it on. So Leinster get a scrum about 5 or 10 metres from the Sharks 22. They play off the back, put some phases together before they make an attempt to go wide, but it's knocked on by Andrew Osborne out on the left wing. So it's another Sharks scrum. At this point, Rory Maguire, I think, comes on for Clarkson, and Mackerleen comes back to the pitch, having replaced Tommy O'Brien earlier, who comes on for Andrew Osborne on the left wing this time. Sharks win a scrum penalty, and there's an offside as well. So they're able to get the penalty kick off the back of that. Scrum pen there was for tight head collapse. They tried to play it out, but they eventually come back for the penalty. So they kick up to the line to the 22, and at this point, it was the young lad Coffey. I think Oliver's his first name. Coffey comes on for Fintan Gunn. Really, I have to emphasize again, I thought it was a really, really good game for Fintan Gunn. It's like I said, first start down South Africa, very tense environment, 28 degrees and humid as hell. And I thought he comported himself very well, kicked very well, controlled the game very well. I thought he had a really fantastic day under tough enough conditions. Sharks set them all off the back of it, but it goes nowhere. Eventually, they try to play off the back, but Leinster are able to force a knock on, giving themselves a scrum on their 22. Alex Soroka at this point picked up what looked initially like a nasty injury. I think the hope is that he just kind of got a whack on the head and was a bit dazed. He was eventually able to walk up under his own steam. At this stage, there's only 2 minutes left on the clock, and Leinster play off the scrum and take a nice long kick from Coffey. They did hear what I wanted them to do last week, which was they didn't try to play for advantage. Every time they got the ball, they just set it and kicked. So Coffey kicks it, and Mackerleen is actually able to win it back. And they go right again, just inside their own half. Coffey for another kick long, but it's called back for a neck roll at one of the previous scrums. So Sharks now have an option. It's probably within range, so they can take the shot at goal to draw the game, or they can go to the corner. I suppose in their heads you could argue if it's draw, they only get one more match point, so might as well go to the corner, which they do. They launch what looks like a very strong scrum or strong ball off the back of that. It seemed to be making pace, and then I don't know who it was, but some Leinster player managed to get through the middle of it, and eventually were able to sack it legally. And the final whistle goes, and the match finishes Sharks 7, Leinster 10.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of gotten used over the years in high pressure away matches like this. It used to be against French teams where we'd be well in it at halftime, but there's just this. It's almost an inevitable phase shortly after the second half began, where they just hit 2 tries, boom, boom. They'd be like 10, 4, 12, 14 points just, and you kind of almost know that they're there. They're going to have that purple patch. We saw it last week against the Bulls. They did it too. And it almost looked like it was going that way this time as well. You sort of knew that they were going to hit their straps and get a couple of scores. And they got the one try. They got that monster maul from the 22. They got over the line. It was a try. Then they had that second chance. I almost thought it was hubris on their wingers that had him step inside. He just thought this was inevitable. Here we go. We're going to win. Home crowd, blah, blah, blah. I can go in, get the extra 2 points. And then Frawley and Osborne had other ideas. It was an amazing held up, but the fact that they didn't get that second try was immense. And
I think it really speaks to, because so often I'll see players like dot the ball out wide, and you'll be like, go in closer, particularly if the out half has been struggling with his kicks. You get as close to the post as possible. But this kind of makes the argument that once you're over the line, it's always reasonable to just put the ball down. 5 points is 5 points. You want to get the extra if you can, but
trust your goal kicker as well.
If you've gotten across that,
you should be able to get them anyway.
Absolutely, and if you've gotten across that line, you want your 5. I think Leinster and Ireland have had the really frustrating experience of being held up more than once, and such a pain to put the effort in to get that far and to be denied your 5 points at that stage.
Absolutely, and of course, the bonus to that is that we had gotten a try before they hit that patch. To get the extra score again as well. We had Clarkson jacking the penalty, and then we were the ability to finish that, and that was amazing to get that second score. And of course, Clarkson also conversely gave away the penalty that put the Sharks back down our end. But so there was a bit going both ways. But listen, it was an amazing half overall defensively. Like you say, the scoring was finished so soon for us to bring that home and to hold them out. I still think they were kind of, apart from the scrum. And, they did have that one maul, but we were able to stop them at other mauls as well. And they were kind of one-dimensional in their approach. I mean, Esterhazen was beating 1-2 tacklers at a time, but they didn't have anything to follow that up. They weren't making the most of those meters he was gaining. The move would die after that almost every time. It was, partly Sarneen Aber defense getting back and scrambling and organizing as well. But, other teams would have a better way of using the meters he's gained. But that last minute decision, you got to hand it to Khaleesi to go in for the win. Home crowd is going to want the win. I do give them that, but our maul defense right at the end was able to stop.
I did just take note there as well, that of the defensive system we've been employing, 24 defenders beaten they had and 5 clean breaks. And it seemed like this system is really a system of bend, don't break.
Yeah.
We'll let them through knowing that the scramble defense is going to catch them. And so far it has,
Yep.
and the ultimate scramble of Frawley and Osborne holding the Sharks player up over the line. So it seems like it's you make a clean break in certain amount of space, you assume a try is on. Leinster seem happy enough to let you make that known they're gonna be able to catch you before you get anywhere.
Absolutely. You look at the wider squad, and people always like to talk about Gary Ringrose's missed tackles. But the fact of the matter is that it's not that he's missed it. He's held them up enough that someone he knows he can shoot out, knowing that someone behind them is going to cover. And that's the overall thing of the system. So that missed tackle stat means nothing. What did you make in the second half, Connor?
Oh, okay. It was a stressful half to watch, because the whole time you're hoping your team can create something and score something. And as you say, for it all to be done within the first 10 minutes of the second half, just the stress was building in me. And that stress eventually was let out in the final whistle, where if there had been anyone anywhere near me, the look I would have gotten of, is he all right? As I screamed a shouty yes. And I think a huge part of it's down to just the defensive commitment, to be willing to put themselves on the line. I think a lot of those players know that they're not playing for the next couple of weeks. They know in their heads that I've got a rest coming, so I will leave everything on the pitch, and they really did. And just watching that second half again, it was brilliant to watch. And knowing the result really helps when it's brilliant to watch like that. But say just that commitment from them, the determination, how resolute they were in, we have a lead, we can take this lead home. Yes, we will make mistakes, but we will back each other, and we'll back whatever else is going on the pitch, and we'll make sure this works for us. Great to watch.
Yeah. I mean, we follow Leinster obviously week in, week out here, and it's not often we say a 3-point win greatly exceeds our expectations, but definitely the case here. It was a great performance. Max Deegan, player of the match, and the final score, like we say, was Sharks 7, Leinster 10. Elsewhere in the URC, those 4 match points proved to be critical for Leinster at the top of the table, as later the same evening, Glasgow made short work of their own South African opponents, the Lions, winning 42-0. As for the other provinces, Munster held out against Connacht at McHale Park in Castlebar, while Ulster came back from 17 points down to defeat the Stormers. There were also wins for Benetton, Scarlets, Bulls, and Edinburgh, which leaves Leinster 8 points clear at the top, Munster and Ulster 5th and 6th respectively, and Connacht still just about in the scrap for a top 8 finish. Meanwhile, in the Women's Six Nations, after falling short against France last week, Ireland bounced back brilliantly in Parma with a hat-trick from Anna McGann, together with 1 each from Dalton, Costigan, Dugang, Wall, and Hogan, plus 7 conversions from Dan O'Brien, going towards a stunning 54-12 victory, a wider margin than England had achieved against the same Italians only a week before. Meanwhile, England and France continued their perfect starts with wins over Wales and Scotland, respectively, and the competition now takes a week off before Ireland's next fixture with the champion Red Roses in Cork on April 12th. Going back to our feature match from Saturday, afterwards, Leo Cullen had this to say, quote, "We probably rode our luck during the course of the game, and it was scrappy, but it was pleasing for some of the young guys like Alan Spicer coming off the bench to experience a win like this," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Bert McLaughlin said this on our Facebook page, quote, "Not really a great game for a neutral, but hey, I'm not a neutral, so it was, of course, a great win. Max was superb," end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so now this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Connor.
I think some of what you've said there in the quotes from Leo Cullen and from Facebook really sum it up. The resolve to come out this week and say, last week didn't go to plan, last week didn't go, we were so close. We're one questionable call from winning that game. And then to come out and say, well, do you know what? We can do it this week instead. And we can do it this week where some of those players who played last week have gone already, have left South Africa and are back in Dublin. So it's our job to step up and look at the age profile of those players. Look how many of them had, you combine the caps of every other player who started, and you probably don't get to Cian Healy's total. But take Cian Healy's total out of it, and you've got players who are mostly like less than 10 caps and a handful of sort of 20 to 40 caps, and then a couple of experienced heads. Our second row, I don't think they've started a game together. I don't think they've. I don't even think they've finished a game together in this competition this year. Fintan Gunn on his first start, Spicer on his first match. Spicer, who, by the way, it's worth throwing in, is taller than RG Snyman and heavier than RG Snyman. So that's an interesting bit of bulk learning from someone like RG Snyman. But Snyman's gone home, Slimani's gone home, Boyle's gone home. So it's left on these younger players, and look what it meant to them. Look what it meant. If you've watched the footage of the full-time whistle and the lads on the sideline looking, going, is it held up? Is it held up? Have we got it? Yeah, and diving on and screaming at each other and shouting at each other and leaping into each other's arms and diving into 2-foot deep swimming pools and all these other things they were doing, because it meant so much for them to say, do you know what, lads? It doesn't matter who is or isn't here. This is what we play for. This is how we play. This is the way the team works. So let's get out and get a win. And, bits of it were messy. Listening back to, I'd say, both of us, there will be a number of people who listen to this pod going, Jesus, did Andrew Osborne do much right? He did. He did loads right. He's just unfortunate to be the one who was responsible for a bunch of knock-ons as well. He'll go out and he'll work on that. He'll step into a field and say, right, launch them in the air for me, and he'll be the one catching them to make sure that next time he does better. Because that seems to be the mentality of this team. How do we do better than we did last week? And they definitely did better. The impact of that win, the fact that young guys like that are going to go out and say, I'm part of that. I'm part of the reason we won that game. I'm part of why we have an extra 4 points. I'm part of why we only need to win a few more games as a team to be guaranteed top spot. And what that'll do psychologically for those players is immeasurable. I think it is worth its absolute weight in gold, what it will do for them psychologically and bring on the next few games.
Yeah, absolutely. Myself and Kigo were saying on the preview how, we were saying how the expectations were low, but you look at all these players coming into the Leinster team. I mean, they didn't get there for nothing. They've shown they have the talent. They've shown they've been willing. They don't just hand them the jersey for the sake of it. They've earned their spot in the team. And if they play to that potential in those conditions, we're definitely going to put ourselves in a chance. And we did see it. You saw Fintan Gunn. You saw our second rows, Mangan and Deeney. We saw them all putting in these performances, and it bodes well for the future. And right to the final whistle, they showed they could do it. What did you think, David?
I thought it was a really encouraging performance, particularly after last week. I was worried coming out of the last week. I almost felt like going into that match, I didn't really expect much, even with Simon being there and Barrett being there, Slimani being there. Like it was definitely a stronger team than we'd sent down before. But I think if we'd gotten pumped, or if we'd had a really bad day at the office, it almost would have been easier to stomach. The fact that we came so close, and then to just fall at that last end, it got me concerned, because it's something Leinster have struggled with. It usually comes out in finals, where Leinster are not used to being behind at the end of a game. They're not used to things coming down to this narrow margin. There was a match a few years ago, I think it was against Toothless Sharks in the RDS, where Leinster had such a monumental lead that we were able to let in 14 points in the last 5 minutes, and the scoreline still looked like we trashed them. So I think when you're used to that kind of dominance, you having your back against the wall, you don't want the first time that ever happens to be in a final, because you're not used to dealing with it. And the way we didn't handle the scrum when we were clearly getting dominated was a source of concern. To then come back a week later, be shorn of Barrett and Snyman and Slimani, and to basically correct all those mistakes, with the scrum, it was notable how quick Deegan was getting off the back of them. Gunn was the scrum half on the field last week when the penalty went against us for the Bulls' final kick. But the combo of the speed he was getting it in and getting it to the back, and then the speed that Deegan was getting it out of there, They clearly saw what mistakes happened last week, and they said it's not going to happen to us again. To not let the heads go down. I thought, the closest we came last week. Okay, we're going to come out this week, and we're just not going to be able to do it again. But they did it again, and they found themselves in the exact same position, except this time they won. So I thought the combo, having their backs against the wall in 2 games on the road, in a row on the road, in hostile conditions. Pretoria at however high above sea level it is, Durban being 28 degrees and humid. Like, you could see Sia Khaleesi buckets of sweat, and he's from South Africa, and he was absolutely pouring with it after the game. So, to be able to handle themselves in those kind of conditions, and to take the loss the first week and then turn it into a victory the next week, I think the combination will almost be worth more to the team overall than if they'd won both games. So I thought as an overall, from the point of view of the league, I thought it's come out of South Africa with 5 points. That is phenomenal stuff. That's going to stand to us, particularly in the end game. But I think it's the mental victory of both getting a victory under very tough circumstances, but having the opportunity to immediately respond to the mistakes you made the week before, to be able to rectify them, and then to turn a very narrow loss into a very narrow victory. I thought it was just, it was fairy tale stuff. Now, I would say if we could avoid coming down to the last 5 minutes and not being sure if we're going to win in the future, I wouldn't mind that, and I think my heart rate wouldn't mind it either. But I think as tours go, this will go down as a pretty good one.
Well, that's brilliant. Many thanks, lads. Thanks again to Connor and David for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for having me.
As for our next batch of Harpin, we'll have our 80+ column posting on Wednesday before turning our attention to Leinster's Champions Cup date with Harlequins at Croke Park. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.